The hall looked like it was built to impress people before they even took a single step inside. Tall doors opened into a wide space filled with warm light. Soft gold colors and long reflections on polished floors. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen stars. Every table was carefully placed, round and wide, dressed in white cloth that fell perfectly to the floor. Glasses caught the light. Plates were set at exact angles. Nothing was accidental. People arrived slowly, dressed in calm confidence. Their voices were low and controlled, as if the room itself demanded a certain tone. Laughter was polite. Smiles were measured. Everyone seemed to know how to stand, how to sit, how to belong here. This night was meant to feel special, but not surprising. Comfort without effort. Luxury without questions. Among the guests, moving quietly between tables, was the woman. She wore a simple uniform, clean and neatly pressed, blending into the background by design. Her steps were careful, her posture straight. She carried trays the way she had learned to, steady and balanced, even when the room grew crowded. She did not rush. She did not linger. She existed in the narrow space between being seen and being ignored. To most people, she was just part of the evening. A pair of hands offering drinks, a soft voice asking short questions, a shadow passing through conversations that mattered more than her presence. But inside her, the night felt heavy. She had worked in places like this before, though none as grand as this one. Still, the feeling was familiar, the quiet pressure to be invisible, the rule that her role was to serve, not to be noticed. She accepted that rule, not because she agreed with it, but because it paid the bills and kept life moving forward. As she moved through the hall, she listened, not in a curious way, but in the way people do when they are surrounded by sound and cannot help but hear pieces of it. Conversations floated past her like fragments of unfinished thoughts. People talked about trips they planned to take, about homes they rarely lived in, about ideas that felt important in the moment and would be forgotten by morning. There was nothing cruel in their voices, just distance, a shared understanding that this night was about comfort, not connection. She nodded when spoken to, smiled when expected, her face practiced calm, even when her mind drifted far from the room. At the far end of the hall stood the piano. It was a grand piano, its surface dark and smooth, reflecting the chandeliers above it. The lid was open, though no one had touched the keys all evening. It had been placed there like a piece of art, meant to complete the picture rather than be used. Every time the woman passed it, her eyes found it without effort. She did not stare, she did not slow down, but something in her chest tightened each time she walked by. The piano felt like a quiet question that had no answer yet. She remembered the weight of keys beneath her fingers, the way sound could fill a room without asking permission. She remembered nights much smaller than this one, where music mattered because there was nothing else. Those memories stayed with her, carefully folded away. She had learned not to let them rise too close to the surface while working. Dreams could be dangerous in places like this. The evening moved forward as planned. Plates were served. Glasses were refilled. A gentle background music played from hidden speakers, pleasant and easy to ignore. The guests leaned back in their chairs, comfortable, satisfied. This was what they had come for. At one point a small group near the front laughed louder than the rest. Someone made a short speech, light and polite, about the beauty of the venue and the importance of moments like these. People nodded. Applause followed, brief and controlled. The woman stood near the edge of the hall, waiting for a signal to move again. Her hands rested lightly in front of her. She watched the room the way someone watches the ocean from shore, aware of its size but not part of it. She noticed small things others did not. A man adjusting his cuff again and again, as if unsure it was perfect. A woman turning her glass slowly, watching the liquid catch the light. A couple sitting together but not speaking, their silence heavy with things unsaid. Luxury did not erase human habits, it only softened their edges. As the night continued, something unexpected happened. The background music stopped at first, no one noticed. Conversations carried on, flowing over the silence without interruption. But gradually, the absence became noticeable. A pause where sound used to be. The hall felt wider, more open. A few people glanced around. Someone frowned slightly, then returned to their conversation. No one seemed bothered. Silence, in a place like this, could feel just as expensive as music. The woman felt it immediately. The quiet pressed against her ears, clear and sharp. It felt different from the usual noise-filled calm of service work. This silence had space in it. Possibility. She looked toward the piano again. It stood there unchanged, waiting. Her steps slowed as she passed it. For the first time that evening, She allowed herself to stop for half a second longer than required. Her breath caught. Just a little. She told herself it meant nothing. She reminded herself where she was, who she was in this room, what was expected of her. And yet, her heart beat faster. Someone at a nearby table raised a hand, asking for assistance. She moved toward them, completing her task with practiced ease. Her voice remained steady, her smile stayed soft, but when she turned away, her gaze returned to the piano. It was strange how something so familiar could feel so distant. She had not played in front of people like this before, not in a room that carried so much quiet power. The thought felt heavy, almost embarrassing, as if even imagining it was crossing an invisible line. The night continued to settle. Plates were cleared. Some guests leaned back, satisfied and relaxed. Others checked the time without meaning to. The event was slowly approaching its natural end. Then the silence grew deeper, without the background music. Every small sound became noticeable. The scrape of a chair leg, the soft cough from the far side of the room, the clink of a glass set down too quickly. People began to feel it, even if they could not name it. The woman stood near the piano now, not by choice but by routine. It was the last area to check before the evening fully closed. She adjusted a chair slightly, making sure it was aligned. Her hands brushed the edge of the piano bench. The touch sent a small shock through her. She pulled her hand back quickly, as if she had touched something forbidden. Her mind filled with reasons to step away. This was not her place. This was not part of her role. Someone would notice. Someone would question it, but no one was looking at her. The guests were lost in their own thoughts. The staff moved quietly, preparing for the end of the night. The hall felt suspended, like it was waiting for something to happen, even if no one knew what that something was. Her breathing grew shallow. She thought of the many nights she had sat alone, playing softly to empty rooms. Of the way music helped her hold together days that felt too long. Of the feeling of being understood without words. This piano was different. The room was different. But the music inside her was the same. She took a step closer. Her shoes made no sound on the polished floor. She stood beside the bench, hands at her sides, unsure where to place them. Her heart beat loudly enough that she was certain others could hear it. She glanced around. Once no one was watching, the silence stretched, thin and delicate. She lowered herself onto the bench slowly, carefully, as if any sudden movement might break the moment. The bench was cool beneath her, solid, real. Her hands hovered above the keys. She did not touch them yet. For a brief second, doubt rushed in. What if she forgot how to begin? What if the sound felt wrong in this space? What if the room rejected her? She closed her eyes. In the quiet, she could hear her own breath, steady human. Her fingers lowered. The first note had not yet been played. And in that pause, the entire hall seemed to lean in, without knowing why. The first note was soft. So soft that it almost blended into the silence instead of breaking it. It did not demand attention. It simply appeared. Like a breath taken after holding it for too long. The woman's finger rested on the key for a moment longer than needed. She listened to the sound fade, watching how it moved through the hall. It did not rush. It did not echo loudly. It settled gently, as if the room itself was learning how to receive it. No one spoke. A few guests lifted their heads, unsure why they had paused mid-conversation. Someone near the back turned slightly in their chair. Another person stopped reaching for a glass. The silence had changed shape. The woman's shoulders loosened just a little. She played another note, then another. Slowly, carefully, she began to form a simple melody. Nothing complex, nothing designed to impress, just a sequence of sounds that felt honest to her hands and familiar to her heart. The piano responded warmly. Its voice filled the space without pushing against it. The room began to listen. At first, people did not realize they were listening. They simply stopped doing other things. A laugh faded before it finished. A sentence remained half-spoken. A fork rested against a plate and did not move. The music found them where they were. The woman's breathing steadied as her fingers moved. Muscle memory guided her, but emotion shaped the sound. Each note carried a quiet weight, shaped by long hours of playing alone, by moments when music was the only way she could speak honestly. She did not look at the audience. Her eyes stayed on the keys, watching her hands move as if they belonged to someone else. This helped her forget where she was, helped her forget who was watching. The melody grew slightly fuller, not louder, but deeper. A man near the front leaned back in his chair, his posture changing without him noticing. His expression softened. He had not expected to feel anything tonight beyond comfort. Across the room, a woman rested her elbow on the table, and let her chin fall into her hand. Her gaze fixed on the piano, though she did not seem to be seeing the performer as much as remembering something far away. The music did not tell a clear story. It did not need to. It created space. Space for memories, for thoughts, for emotions that had been sitting quietly for too long. The woman at the piano felt a strange calm settle over her. The fear she had felt moments earlier did not disappear completely, but it grew smaller, manageable. Each note she played made the next one easier. Her fingers moved with more confidence now. The melody began to breathe, rising and falling gently. It carried a sense of longing, but also warmth, as if it understood sadness, without being trapped by it. The staff stood still at the edges of the hall. They had stopped working without realizing it. Trays rested on counters, hands folded loosely at sides. They watched in silence, surprised by their own stillness. This was not part of the plan, but no one felt the need to stop it. The woman's posture shifted as she leaned slightly into the music. Her shoulders followed the movement of her hands. The piano bench creaked softly beneath her weight, a small reminder that this moment was real. She remembered a room much smaller than this hall, a place with plain walls and uneven floors. She remembered playing quietly so she would not disturb anyone, playing for herself, and for no one else. Now, the sound traveled freely. It reached corners of the hall she could not see. It brushed against chandeliers and slipped between tables. It wrapped itself around listeners who had arrived, guarded and careful, and loosened something inside them. Someone near the center of the room closed their eyes. Another person swallowed hard, surprised by a sudden tightness in their chest. They did not understand where it came from. They only knew it felt familiar. The woman played on. She did not rush the piece. She allowed silence between phrases, letting each pause speak as clearly as the notes themselves. She trusted the quiet now. The melody shifted gently, turning toward something lighter, not joyful, exactly, but hopeful, like morning light entering a room after a long night. A soft sound came from the audience, not applause, not words, just a breath released slowly, shared by more than one person. The music had done something unexpected. It had removed the distance. For this brief stretch of time, the room was no longer divided into guests and staff, wealth and work, center and edges. Everyone was simply present. The woman felt it without looking. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached the final section of the piece. Emotion rose in her chest, warm and sharp at the same time. She focused on her breathing, letting it guide the rhythm. The last notes came quietly. They did not fade dramatically. They ended the way honest things often do, simply, without asking for more. Her fingers lifted from the keys. The sound disappeared. For a moment, no one moved. The silence that followed was different from the one before. It was full, complete, as if the room needed time to return to itself. The woman remained still on the bench. Her hands rested in her lap. She stared at the keys, unsure what to do next. Her heart beat hard, not from fear now, but from release. She had said something she had been holding in for a long time. The first clap came from somewhere near the back. It was soft, almost hesitant. Then another followed, and another. The applause grew slowly, not in volume, but in sincerity. It did not explode. It rose like a wave that had been waiting patiently to move. People stood. Not all at once, but naturally, as if their bodies knew this moment deserved it. Hands came together without hurry. Faces held expressions that were open, unguarded. The woman stood up from the bench. She did not bow deeply or dramatically. She simply turned to face the room, her hands still shaking slightly at her sides. Her face showed surprise. And something else too, relief. She had not expected this. She met the eyes of a few people in the front rows. None of them looked through her. They looked at her. She offered a small nod, unsure how else to respond. The applause continued, then slowly softened. People returned to their seats, still murmuring quietly to one another. The atmosphere had changed. The room felt warmer, closer. The woman stepped away from the piano. Her legs felt unsteady as she walked back toward the edge of the hall. A staff member passed her and gave her a quick, gentle smile. Nothing more was said. Nothing needed to be. The event moved toward its end. Guests gathered their belongings. Coats were collected. Conversations resumed. But they sounded different now. Softer, more thoughtful. People did not speak about the performance loudly. They did not need to explain it. They carried it with them instead. As the hall emptied, the woman returned to her tasks. She cleared a table, straightened a chair, picked up a glass left behind. Everything looked the same. But it did not feel the same. She passed the piano. one last time before leaving. Its surface reflected the dimmed lights above. It stood quietly again, no longer waiting. She paused beside it for a moment, placing her hand lightly on its edge. "Thank you," she whispered, though she was not sure to whom. When she finally stepped outside, the night air felt cool against her face. The city beyond the hall moved as it always did, unaware of what had happened inside. She walked away without looking back. The next morning would be ordinary, work would continue, life would remain uncertain in many ways. But something inside her had shifted. She had taken a risk, small and quiet, and the world had answered kindly. And somewhere, in the memory of that hall, a sound remained. Not the piano itself, but the feeling it left behind, the reminder that even in places built for luxury, it is honesty that people stay for.